Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm talking about books that I just don't mention enough on my channel. Since starting my booktube channel over a year and a half ago, I have read almost 200 books. I don't talk about 200 books on this channel. So I thought that by making this video, I would just give a couple of those books that I do have strong feelings about just a chance to be heard, and you guys know my opinions on them. I don't love every single one of these books, but I don't really hate any of these books. Again, they're just a couple books that I just realized that when I'm doing tags or, you know, just talking about books, I just don't mention them, and they deserve to be mentioned, so that's what I'm doing today. The first book I'm going to be talking about is the Academy series by Rochelle Mead. I have only recently started reading this series. I'm still in the middle of it. I haven't finished it. I'm currently reading book 4, and I am obsessed. I started reading Vampire Academy in May because when I went to BookCon, I was planning on meeting Rochelle Mead at BookCon, but ended up meeting her a little bit later. So I was able to get my book signed by Rochelle Mead, and oh my gosh, do I wish I could have met her now after reading 2.5 more of her books, because these books, guys, are so I am just so obsessed with Vampire Academy. Like, I don't know where it's coming from. I can't stop thinking about it now that I'm reading it, and I was planning on, like, reading a couple different, like, light, easy contemporaries before VidCon, and now the only thing I can read is Vampire Academy because I'm just so addicted to these books. So they are pretty new on my read shelf, but I love these books so much, and just expect me to talk more about them in the coming days because I cannot stop thinking about them. The next series I want to talk about is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I read this series a couple months ago, back in like October, November, December. I am not the biggest fan of this series. I know so many people are like die-hard Throne of Glass fans, but I just really couldn't get into it. I really love Throne of Glass. I was kind of iffy on Kind of Midnight, and it took me like nearly a month to just read Heir of Fire, and I couldn't. I think the premise of the book was so great, but, you know, as the magic started coming into it more and, you know, the plot started really developing, it got so big, and I'm like not a massive epic fantasy fan, and like at first it kind of felt like just like fantasy, and now it's just like full-blown epic fantasy. So that has a lot to do with it, and as the series went on, you know, Heir of Fire was just really tough for me to read, so that had a huge impact on it. I really do love Selena as a main character. Like, I love her, and she's the reason that I'm continuing with the rest of the series because I want to see where she goes. But while it's not my favorite, I do really appreciate a lot about it because the world building in this book, while it's not, you know, my cup of tea, it's really good, and I think that this series has a lot to offer, so I'm definitely looking forward to the series for the coming books in the future. Then the next book I have is the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series by Rick Riordan. I read Percy Jackson probably around this time last year because I have a full series discussion that I did a while ago on all of these books. I never read Percy Jackson as a kid. I know it's a middle grade, and so a lot of people read it when they were, you know, younger, but I only recently read it, but that didn't change anything because I loved Percy Jackson so much. It's really weird because I'm so not a Greek mythology fan. Like, that was my least favorite thing to go over in high school, but I really like the plays that they put on the myths. I don't know. The Greek mythology in this book is so good. I just don't like the actual Greek mythology. But I haven't read Heroes of Olympus yet. I have all the books. I just haven't read them yet, but I really love this world, and I'm definitely planning on continuing with the rest of Rick Riordan's work. I guess because it's middle grade, I don't think about it when I'm talking about all of these YA books, so it kind of gets lost in the mix, but Percy Jackson was so great. It brought a lot of nostalgic feelings for me about the books that I used to read when I was like a middle grade reader, but Percy Jackson is just freaking phenomenal, and just because it's middle grade doesn't mean you shouldn't read it now, because if you haven't read it yet, pick it up, because it's timeless. The next book I'm going to be talking about is the Divergent series by Veronica Roth. I really liked Divergent. Like, don't get me wrong, like, this series was great. But over time, I've just been losing what happened in this book because I've read so many books after it. With the movies coming out and everything, it really helps me jog my memory about it, but because I don't remember a lot of it, I just don't think to talk about it. But this is a great dystopian, and when I was first really reading dystopians, like, I read The Hunger Games, and then the next I read was Divergent, and then after that I read The Darkest Minds, so it was in the time period where I was first really getting into dystopian. So, like, this book is really special to me because I probably wouldn't be reading as many dystopians now had it not been for Divergent. But again, it just kind of gets lost in the mix because to me me, it's so old, and there's so many new books that I want to talk about that I just kind of forget about Divergent. But Divergent was really, really great, and I really enjoyed reading it, so hopefully someday soon I'll be able to reread it. Then the next book I'm talking about is the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. I love the Lunar Chronicles, and out of all of these books that I have here, I probably mentioned it the most on my channel. But again, I feel like I've lost so much of the story with me reading all of these new books that it's like hard for me to talk about. My mom is actually currently reading Cress, and then she's gonna read Fairest, so she is like kind of jogging my memory with it, so I don't know, I just really, really loved these books. This was one of the very first sci-fis that I started reading. I got into sci-fi really, really late in the game, but I love it so much. I think it's just such a great entry into sci-fi. Like, if you're not a big sci-fi fan like I was, then I think that Cinder is definitely going to put you on that track to starting to like sci-fi. And I really like that it's storybook retellings. You know, I haven't read like the Grimm's Tales or anything. Like, my fairy tales started and ended in my childhood, but it's super cool to see all the retellings and kind of like the mythology in Percy Jackson. But it's just really cool to think about this main character, Cinder, who's in New Beijing in this dystopian sci-fi world, who's also a cyborg, is also Cinderella, but it makes sense, and it's super cool. It's a super freaking cool series. Then the next book I'm talking about is also a really awesome sci-fi, and that is Alienated by Melissa Landers. This is another one that I read pretty recently. It's just, I feel like the characters and the plot of it doesn't stick out enough to me. It's another really, really great sci-fi that's going to get you into the genre if you're not into it before, because it's very laid back and has a contemporary feel to it, which is, you know, much more inviting than the super complex sci-fi, like reading Star Wars to start off getting into sci-fi. Alienated is just such a fun read, and then when I read Alienated, I only had to wait a couple days for Invaded to come, and so like I just pretty much marathoned the whole series so far. And then when the next book comes out, it's a fun series, and sometimes reading doesn't have to be like super heavy and have all these morals to the story, and it doesn't have to always be classics. Like, sometimes you just need a fun read, and Alienated is a fun read. Then I'm going to be talking about The Unbecoming of Dyer by Michelle Hodkin. I was like super obsessed with Dyer, okay? It's kind of the same thing as the Lunar Chronicles and as Divergent and as a lot of books that I have on my shelf. It's that I read them so long ago that I'm losing grasp on the plot, you know, and I also didn't love the last book as much as I loved the first two. I feel like it really declined as the series went on, kind of like Throne of Glass as well. But Dyer is just so awesome. It's super creepy, and like this is the first like really creepy book that I read, and it was also one of the very first sci-fis that I've read as well. But it's like sci-fi paranormal, so it's not like strictly sci-fi, and it's a really great read. It's a little bit denser compared to the other sci-fis that I've been talking about, but I think it's really, really interesting, and I think a lot of people will love it, and I already know that a lot of people love it because, you know, everyone has read this book on BookTube. I remember when I was first getting into BookTube, I saw this book and I was like, wow, that cover is cool and the title sounds awesome. And then I went to somebody else's video and they said The Evolution of Dyer, and for some reason I thought it was a standalone, and I was like, huh, I could have sworn it was The Unbecoming, but now I guess it's The Evolution. And then I went to Barnes & Noble and saw that there were two of them, and I was like, oh, this is a series, so I got both of them. But the first two were great, last one was kind of mediocre, but I still really, really love this series, and I really need a Dyer reread, like, really, really soon. The next one I wanted to be talking about is The Archived by Victoria Schwab. I think I read this book like exactly a year ago, because this week was the week of BookTubeathon last year, and I read it during BookTubeathon. But I freaking love The Archived, okay? I don't know why I feel like it's taking so long for book 3 to be published, probably because Victoria Schwab has been writing a lot of other things, but The Archived is so freaking good. I had a really hard time getting into The Archived to start, but as soon as I like understood the world and realized where it was going, I just could not stop reading these two books. It's another book that's kind of like paranormal sci-fi fantasy, and it's just super cool and unique, and I haven't read anything like it before. I absolutely love this book, so I don't understand why I don't mention it more. I guess I just don't think of it. But I really want to reread these soon too. Like, all these books I'm talking about, I'm just like, I need to reread them. I don't remember enough about them, and that's probably why I don't mention them enough. But The Archived is super, super good, and if you haven't picked it up yet, really go pick it up. It's awesome. And then the last book I'm going to talk about is Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins. I feel like I've been talking about this book a little bit more than I talk about everything else here, probably because the sequel has just recently come out a couple months ago, and so after I had read that, I was raving about it a bit. Rebel Belle is another super, super awesome and unique fantasy story, because like Alienated, while it has all of these fantasy elements, it has a super contemporary feel. Like, if you took away the paladins and the oracles and whatever else is in this book that I can't remember at the moment, you get a contemporary love story in high school. So it's just super cool to have those aspects and to have the fantasy aspects as well. There's just so much humor in it that I really love in contrast to all of the crazy shit that's going on in this book, and I feel like it just has such a promising story. And while the sequel just came out, I cannot wait for book 3 because it ended on a cliffhanger, and these damn authors with their sequel cliffhangers, I just don't know what to do with myself. But Rebel Belle is awesome, and if you haven't picked it up already, pick it up. So those are just a couple of books that I feel like I just don't talk enough about my channel. I'm trying really hard to kind of expand the books that I talk about on my channel, specifically in tags, because I'm just always grabbing at the same books. I mean, you guys know that I can't go 2 seconds without mentioning the Mortal Instruments in a video. I want to be able to talk about other books that I love, and so I feel like I'm always talking about these super hyped up books that everyone has read and everyone is talking about, or these super underrated books that I've just found and can't stop raving about, that I miss all these books in the middle, and I kind of want to bring those books in the middle up front in my channel so that more people can talk about them with me. Out of all of the books here, give me one that you think I should reread first, because I really do need rereads of all of them. But that is it for this video, and I will see you soon for a new one. Bye!